Hey everyone, remember that $32 billion Google acquisition of Wiz? Not so fast. You're watching TechStrong Gang. Hey everyone, happy Monday. Monday again. Can't it just stay Sunday forever? But happy Monday, everyone. Welcome to TechStrong Gang. It's Alan Schimmel here. We've got some interesting stuff to go on, as I teased in the opening. Who would have thought that this DoJ antitrust unit would actually look into a deal, but maybe they're looking into the Google Wiz deal. Reverse cloud coming out of Microsoft. Platform. This is going to be a big platform engineering week. We'll be at Platform Con this week, though some of us will be at the Open Source Summit in Denver. We've got a lot to go over, and we got a great gang here to go over it with you. Let me introduce you to our gang real quickly. Some of them are regulars, some are always regulars, but fairly new. Speaking of regulars, let's go to our woman in New Mexico, not in Albuquerque, but in New Mexico. Though she'll be in Denver this week for the Open Source Summit. She's the PloyHub CEO and Open Source Ambassador Extraordinaire, Tracy Ragan. Hey, Chase, how are you?
Hey, Alan. Yeah, I'm hanging out at Open Source Summit, and I've got talks later today, so come on by. And tomorrow we're doing a focus group on CID cybersecurity in the main ballroom at the Bluebird Ballroom. Grab a lunch and come in and tell us what you think.
Wow, cool stuff. I'd love to hear. Maybe when you get back, Trace, and get back on the show, we could get a report on that. Though we'll be there live. Maybe Mike can talk to you about it after, and we'll have a full-blown TechStrong TV coverage on it. Very cool. All right, from the mountains of New Mexico to the mountains of Colorado. That's all mountains to me. He's Futurum advisor on I forget the exact wording now, Mitch.
New wording is System Engineering Lifecycle.
Love it. System Engineering Lifecycle, SELC. Mitch Ashley. Hey, Mitchell, how are you, man?
Good to be here. I'm very connected to Tracy because those mountains are just connected right up the continent.
So here's the question. Are you throwing off a mound yet, or are you still not throwing?
No. I'm still, sinking into the ice tank every day and warming it up again, seeing how the shoulder's feeling. We'll see. The shoulder will tell me when it's ready.
All right. Those damn Yankees. Next up, let me introduce you to Dr. Stacy Thayer, one of our newest gang members. Hey, Stacy, how are you?
Hi, Alan. I'm good. How are you?
Good. Hey, Stacy, you know what? I don't know if we've ever told people what you're up to these days.
Doing a couple of different things. So my work as a cyber psychologist, I'm acting director of the cyber psychology program at Norfolk State University, where I also teach forensic cyber psychology. And then I'm also working at Cobalt, helping them out in their marketing team and working there in their senior event leads position.
Very cool. I love it. Cyber psychology. Man, speaking of cyber, he's all dressed and ready to rock today. TechStrong Gang member, Tech Field Day delegate, our friend Jack Poller. Hey, Jack.
Hey, it's great to be on the show and great to meet Stacy. That's a very intriguing and interesting title. I'd love to learn more.
I've always said we need some psychological help. Don't you agree, Jack?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Jumping from Jack. He's got a big smile on his face because the Yankees won a game finally. He's the Chief Content Officer, Mike Vizard. Hey, Mike, how are you?
Yeah, and apparently I'm in Denver playing an elaborate game of Where's Tracy?
Yeah, okay. Very cool. Very cool, guys. All right. So it seems the DOJ might be looking into this Google Wiz acquisition. I thought we're in a laissez-faire form of government. Let's make it great. What's going on, Mike?
Well, apparently that only applies to certain companies, maybe, but it seems like there is some selective decision-making going on here. The DOJ is reportedly investigating the proposed acquisition of Wiz by Google. But Jack, I got to ask you, what's your take on this whole thing? And is this a good use of taxpayer dollars?
That's a loaded question. I'll start with it's not surprising that they're looking into this for two reasons. One is the current administration has a penchant for being very wary of what big tech is doing. They're very concerned about past censorship and other reasons. So that's one. And the other is the new Assistant Attorney General, Gail Slater, who covers antitrust, is a long-term antitrust person at the DoJ. So this is, and she's basically said that she's planning on continuing the path of the last 4 years of what the Biden administration was doing. So that they want to investigate big M&A deals, and $32 billion is a big M&A deal, is not surprising. And Google anticipated this. Google and Wiz anticipated this because they have a 10% of $3.2 billion breakup fee if this doesn't go through. So they always thought that there's a possibility it doesn't go through.
$3.2 billion is not chicken fees. I would imagine Google was hoping not to have to pay that money.
Absolutely. And I think, traditionally, and I'm not sure how it's going to work here, but traditionally when the DOJ has looked into antitrust stuff, they've focused on sort of how much of the market does any one company control. The classic case that people study in business school is the M&A activities among Office Depot, Office Max, and Staples, where there were three companies that basically controlled the entire office supply market. Here, when you look at cloud security, it's not three companies, it's 8 or 9 majors and another 20 minor companies that are all involved in this. You have Palo Alto, Fortinet, Orca, Microsoft. There's a lot of companies that play in the space, and cloud security covers a very big, broad definition, whether it's CNAPP, Cloud Native Application Protection, or CSPM, Cloud Security Posture Management, or CWP, Cloud Work and Cloud Platform Protection. There's all sorts of variations of bundles of different services that these companies provide. So if Google takes it over, is that going to corner the market, the anti-competitive? I really don't think so.
Mitch, let me ask you, is this a distinct and separate market, this thing called Cloud Native Application Protection Platform? Or can you make a legitimate argument that says that it's just an extension of cloud security and Google's a cloud service provider, so therefore they need this and it's not a separate market?
It's kind of the intersection of application security and Kubernetes container security is really what you're talking about. And it's the security world's, entrance or getting into, trying to get into that application layer without getting too deep into the app, but really still the infrastructure that apps run on. So, whether that's its own product category, you could argue whether that's strong enough of an area, or is it just really kind of fall into AppSec or cloud security, a little bit of both. So I think it's a, potato thing.
Well, speaking to people on Wall Street, they don't seem too concerned. When they were asked, they just said taco.
Oh, okay.
Well, this has been a works in a while, right? We saw this maybe a year ago, early 2024. There was an effort to combine these two companies. Wiz declined. I think it was around $20 billion at the time. So, well, they made some money off of it, right? Waiting. and I can't imagine that Google, with all of their resources, hasn't done some pretty strong research and preparation for this objection from the DOJ. So I suspect it's probably going to go through. It just may take a little time and some money thrown at some lawyers, and
or the money thrown someplace else. Maybe some cryptocurrency. A certain cryptocurrency, or maybe some gold phones. Yeah, that's the idea.
You know what? Maybe they'll buy some gold phones. And it'll be all okay. And that, that's not. I don't think that's too out of the question. But to your question, Alan, I really believe that these kinds of tools are essential for these cloud providers.
Absolutely, and the other thing is, Google is not the dominant cloud provider, right? They're not the 800-pound gorilla. This isn't about search. And so, they're not the 800-pound gorilla in cloud, and cloud security is almost a offshoot of the bigger cloud market, or a subset of the bigger cloud market. So I don't, honestly, I think, Jack, you might be onto something with the lady or person who's running the antitrust over at DoJ. But as soon as someone in that administration says that she's carrying on the policies of the Biden administration, they'll probably take a 180 anyway.
Yeah, but and the other part of it is, that Google's doesn't have a strong track record of, after acquisitions, continuing to support the other the other clouds, right? So Microsoft has done a very good job in trying to build tools that support Microsoft and Amazon and Google. Google, not so much. So it's not clear if Google acquires Wiz, will Wiz still be able to maintain that level of independence and be able to provide the same level of security on a non-Google environment.
But there are other CNAPs out there.
There are, but it also means, from an antitrust perspective, is does that mean that Google is actually going to be able to continue to compete against Microsoft or Palo Alto or Orca in providing,
a reverse antitrust, right? By doing this, does the CNAP market open up with more opportunity for others, especially when you have AWS, exponentially bigger than Google, that's seen that, and take the Wiz out of that AWS marketplace, what does that open up? That seems more competitive to me.
I think this is just as much about competing against Cisco as it is the other cloud providers from a security market perspective, right? Because Wiz brought that independent. Now, to Jack's point, whether Google can survive that through the Borg acquisition into Google, but that it's more than just the cloud providers. Yes, obviously it is those folks, but I think Cisco ought to be concerned. Maybe they aren't concerned because they don't think it'll survive the multi-vendor, multi-environment, but we'll see.
Stacy, what does a deal like this do to the mindset of the buyers out there? Do they just kind of freeze everything and wait to see how this soap opera plays out, or do they ignore it until something dramatic happens?
I think a lot of them wait and see. What does this mean? And I think, there are companies that get acquired, and to Jack's point, nothing happens with them, nothing changes. You don't really even know. And then there's acquisitions that happen where Wiz then becomes more Google than it was Wiz. And then anybody who signed on and said, well, wait, I signed on with Wiz, this is not the Wiz that I signed on with, may move on. So I think it depends. Does this just fall into Google's checklist? If they checked a box, okay, we had this technology, we did this acquisition, and they let them continue to make their own success and do things their way? Or does it become the Google way of things? And are they getting what they signed up for within this change?
I think this is an essential purchase for Google. I know we've talked on our gang shows in the past about where does Google go when everybody's using Anthropic and ChatGPT in place of Google searches. I am surprised by how little I use Google searching anymore. I mean, I never go to Google to look for anything. I am either talking to Anthropic or my ChatGPT window, and I never ask Google for anything. So maybe this is a pretty essential part of Google's strategy to shift and build their cloud platform. And in terms of revenue, I can't imagine them restricting, companies buy revenue, right? So they're buying Wiz's revenue. They're only going to build on that revenue because they need that revenue to replace in the future what we used to rely on for typing in our single question in the Google window, because I think fewer and fewer people are doing it.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned they're buying revenue because it's an all-cash deal. So they're giving up a whole lot of cash to buy future revenue as opposed to giving up a whole lot of stock.
Well, it's one can make the argument that Google stock's more valuable than present day cash. right?
It also lets the current owners walk away very quickly instead of waiting.
Yeah, it does. Well, they're not locked up like that, though they could still be locked up with incentives. But it also points to that, quite frankly, during the COVID years and immediately prior to that, these big tech companies built up Fort Knoxes full of dry powder, dry cash, right? Apple, Google, Microsoft, Meta, they're all sitting on huge reserves of cash with really kind of nowhere to go with it at some level, right? So though Google is, 32 billion is a lot of money in anyone's book, they've got it. And then more.
Referencing a show from last week, maybe there'll be Google stable coins and you get those instead of money for.
Could be. That might get the DoJ to go for it.
I don't see the argument. When I look at it, like you said, Alan, they're not the primary player in the space. AWS is. These are tools that customers need, so it's only making the customer's experience better. And I don't believe that they're going to cut off their customers who are not in the Google environment and they're in the other cloud environments, whatever that might be, because I don't think they want to lose the revenue. They need the revenue.
Yeah, I think it'll go through. All right, let's take a break. Let's come back and do a little reverse cloud. You're watching Tech Strong Gang.